very kind and I'm very grateful. Kevin, I'm very grateful to you for those very kind words. Kind of in shock, actually. We've had occasion to play golf a few times. And my dear friends here, Dr. Dominic Albo is my golf coach. He's here, and we played golf before. And Kevin, you lied in public in my diocese. I do not swim in the golf club, but that's all right. I like to think that I do. I'm so delighted to be with you tonight, and welcome once again, everybody. It's a joy to have you here, and it's a wonderful way for you and me to celebrate this National Migration Week as we join with so many others throughout our country in giving witness to the tremendous contributions our immigrants make to our country. And I'd like to just, before I begin, just my brief welcoming remarks, to thank so many that Kevin already thanked, but just to echo his words of gratitude. And certainly it's an honor to see Ambassador Young here again and to have him with us, and Maria Odom and so many colleagues that I work with in Washington, D.C., who actually are the ones that really do such great work and are just so marvelous for our United States Catholic Conference. They worked untiringly for our conference. I'm also very honored that our Mexican consul is with us tonight, Mrs. Socorro Orbirosa. Socorro, won't you stand for a moment, please? Por favor, Mrs. Orbirosa is a marvelous friend of our community and works tirelessly for us, and we're just so honored to have you here in our city. Kevin's already mentioned, I would just ask all of my staff, all those who work in the diocese, priests, staff, to stand just for a moment so we can acknowledge you. I'm so grateful for your presence here tonight. Please stand. Susan, Maria, everybody, Colleen. I'm so honored to have so many of you here, so many working so hard, religious and lay. It's just an honor to be with you all. I see Aiden Batar is here. He works with Catholic Community Services, and he's in charge of our refugee resettlement program. We resettle about 500 refugees a year here in Utah, and he works just tirelessly with them. And he's been honored in the past by MRS and the Bishops' Conference, and it's so good that he's with us. And the Scalabrini Fathers are with us. I can't help but say, in your name and mine, how grateful we are to the witness of the Scalabrini order for all that they do for our immigrants, our refugees, and asylum seekers, and the way that they have suffered. I mean, some of them just recently even have been kidnapped and killed in Mexico, for example. So we're so very, very grateful to the Scalabrinis. Please stand up just for a minute, those of you that are here. Our agenda for these days looks very rich and informative, and I know that your presence will help to bring it to life. And I agree with Kevin. This is a wonderful opportunity to be together. It's my hope that you will leave Utah more prepared to speak out and to advocate on behalf of our immigrant sisters and brothers in your own states and localities. And I've been really praying for us, and for you, and for me, and for our gathering, especially praying for our immigrants, as we did at the liturgy earlier, who bear the brunt of our failed immigration system. And we thank God for our safe journeys here, journeys that were far more easy than so many other journeys to get to our shores. As Kevin alluded to, we have had a dry winter. I don't ski. I'm not a skier. I subscribe to Irma Bombeck's theory that you never participate in a sport that has an ambulance park nearby. Of course, the way I play golf, there should be an ambulance park. But that's why I play with the surgeon. I figure if I hurt myself, he's right there to help me. But we have a saying in Utah, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It seems, however, as if time is up in terms of waiting for comprehensive immigration reform, at least if you believe some of the people in Washington. But it is the American public, it is we, it is the Catholics and the other people of faith, and the other dedicated souls who work so hard for immigrants who will decide the final outcome. So many people, so many of you, have worked so hard these past years to achieve what seems like an elusive goal. Yet we must never give up hope, and I fully believe that one day we will be successful. In the meantime, we must always keep focused as we advocate for immigration reform in this complex and constantly changing landscape in our country today. This is, as Kevin said so on target, a very important time for the immigration debate in our nation. While Congress has failed to address the issue, our state legislatures and local governments are not hesitating to attempt to fill the vacuum. Instead of one consistent national policy, we are now confronted with hundreds of state and local immigration policies, the majority of which, sadly, are harmful to immigrant families and communities. This issue is very real for us in Utah, as it is in all of our states. Just before I came here as bishop, on December 12th, 2006, there was a raid near St. Thomas Aquinas Church in Logan that resulted in the immediate deportations of 200 of our parishioners. The fact that it took place on the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe made the tragedy even worse for all of us. The fear, unrest, and shock of that and other terrible raids in our state continue to this day. Just the other day I was talking to the former pastor of St. Thomas, and he told me that many of the immigrant parishioners are hesitant to settle down, to plant roots, to plan for their futures here in the United States. They live in fear. This despite the fact that they work hard and productively in our communities, serving our needs day in and day out. Although the moment seems dark and the prospect of comprehensive immigration and reform in Congress distant, I believe that the work of our church on immigration reform on the state level and local level, both in the past and the months ahead, could make all the difference in how our nation eventually solves this problem. Let me explain. Rather than looking at the moment as a daunting, if not impossible challenge, we should rather look upon it as an opportunity. You may be asking yourself how fighting a record number of restrictive state immigration laws and local enforcement law initiatives could be an opportunity. Well, it is clear that Congress will not act on this issue unless a strong national consensus emerges where the majority of Americans agree on a path forward and communicate that to their federal elected officials. The only way that will happen is if the American people are educated on the issues and the realities of immigration. And that can only occur if the issue is right in front of them, being debated in their local communities. This gives us the opportunity to go to Catholics and educate them on the immigration issue, to introduce them to immigrants, and to show how life without the hard work of immigrants would affect them. We can and should take advantage of this moment to organize locally, to improve our advocacy and communication, so that we are prepared when the next chance for immigration reform happens at the federal level. And it will, no doubt. Different laws, particularly enforcement-only laws and initiatives, played out in 50 states, are bound to fail, since they will not fix a broken federal immigration system. Immigrants, over 70% of whom have been here 5 years or longer, are not leaving. They are just hiding in fear. The American public will begin to understand that the issue must be addressed comprehensively on a federal level, and a consensus will emerge. As Winston Churchill once said, Americans eventually do the right thing once they have tried everything else. Our voice, the voice of the Catholic community, and so many other communities as well, must be part of that consensus and help to shape it. That is why we must continue to fight the battle locally and remain a voice of faith in the debate. We must also continue to fight because of the real suffering that is occurring in immigrant families and communities. There are 4 million United States citizen children who have one or more undocumented parents. The combination of federal-state enforcement partnerships and federal enforcement actions has led to an unprecedented separation of families. Nearly a quarter of those deported in the last year were part of a family with a U.S. citizen, most likely a child. They also have led to a record number of deportations over the past 3 years, as is evidenced by over 1 million persons who have been deported during that period. How do we fight these state and local immigration laws? Here in Utah, we have employed the Utah Compact, which helped to define the debate in this state. 3 laws were passed last year. An enforcement law, HB 497, which has been enjoined by the courts, but also a worker program, HB 116, and an immigrant worker exchange program with Mexico, HB 466. Although the guest worker law is probably unconstitutional, it did recognize the need for a broader solution than just enforcement. The compact principles also helped to fuse a much harsher enforcement-only bill than was enacted. Similar compacts, such as the one in Iowa and another one developing in Arizona to the south of us, can be useful tools for advocacy. They also are consistent with Catholic public policy positions, which are based upon Catholic teaching. For those of you who may not be familiar with the compact, it was an effort to bring leaders from the civic, political, religious, business, legal, and law enforcement community around a common set of principles, but from a state perspective. These principles are meant to guide our state leaders who must grapple with the realities of a broken immigration system in our country, and more particularly, who hopefully do not forget that immigration is a human, moral issue and not simply a political debate. The Utah Compact, for example, contains several elements consistent with such Catholic teaching. First, the Compact emphasizes that immigration is best addressed on the federal level rather than on the state and local levels. This is consistent with church statements, which reaffirm that migration is a global phenomenon, which requires international cooperation among nation states. The national level is better positioned to examine all the forces which drive migration, including international ones, and develop a uniform policy and set of rules for immigration into and out of the nation. Interestingly, the Supreme Court will soon decide the issue of preemption of federal laws over state law in the case of Arizona versus the United States. Second, the Compact acknowledges and supports the need for law enforcement of immigration laws, but with the respect for basic human rights. Additionally, this function is also the purview of the federal government, with state and local law enforcement focusing on criminal acts and the safety of the community. This helps preserve the trust between immigrant communities and law enforcement. It also protects against the abuse of immigrants. Third, the Compact talks about the breakup of families. As I mentioned, local initiatives have had a harsh impact on family unity. Children are the victims of family separation. As the United States bishops have pointed out, a broken immigration system shreds the social fabric of our nation. Fourth, the Compact highlights the economic contributions of immigrants and how they work in important industries in Utah. This is a point which should not be ignored and which is often dismissed by commentators. Immigrants, by and large, possess a strong work ethic and enhance our economic life as consumers and producers of goods. Finally, we live in a free society as highlighted in our compact, in which we enjoy the basic constitutional rights guaranteed by our founding fathers and our Constitution. Many of the laws we have seen passed in Arizona and in Alabama, for example, threaten these basic liberties. Basic human rights are guaranteed by our Creator. Here in Utah, we use the compact as a firewall against harsh immigration enforcement proposals. Although we were unable to prevent an enforcement law from being passed, we were able to significantly change the terms of the debate. The other two Utah laws passed, the worker program and the immigration exchange program with Mexico, acknowledge the other side of the equation, that immigrants are important to the life of the state. Thus, a state compact can be useful in many ways. While the overall goal of the compact is to work toward a federal solution, it can be used to evaluate state laws. In-state tuition laws, or laws that provide state benefits to immigrants, for example, are consistent with the compact, since they supplement the federal government's role and do not replace it. The compact can also be used, as we did in Utah, to influence the debate, to provide a more humane framework for the discussion on the state level. We must not forget, however, that the ultimate goal of the compact is to build pressure for federal reform. As I mentioned earlier, a system of 50 state laws which supplant federal authority is untenable. I hope the Supreme Court agrees with this assessment in the Arizona case. In this regard, I call upon our own legislature here in Utah, soon to convene, to pass a resolution to direct our Utah congressional delegation to lead the way forward in Congress toward humane reform of our immigration laws. Lest there be any confusion, I think it is important to say that the Catholic Church understands and readily acknowledges the role that enforcement and the rule of law play in our system. Nonetheless, as many here in Utah and across the country might argue, we do not believe enforcement only is the answer. Rather, it must be coupled with humane reforms in our legal immigration system that will allow immigrants to play by a fair and equitably administered set of rules. This is not the case in our current system. Only the federal government can achieve this balance. Still, given these realities, I am gratified by the fact that there is now an Iowa Compact, which has been released, and an Arizona Accord being developed. I hope that you will consider such a tool in your efforts on the state and local level. I would like to conclude by thanking you all for all you are doing on behalf of our immigrant brothers and sisters. No doubt this work often seems daunting, but there are millions of people whom you may never meet who are depending on you. In his address to the New World Congress on the Pastoral Care of Immigrants in 1985, Blessed Pope John Paul II of happy memory stated, and I quote, "Every human being has the right to freedom of movement and of residence within the confines of his own country. When there are just reasons in favor of it, he must be permitted to migrate to other countries and to take up residence there. The fact that he is a citizen of a particular state does not deprive him of membership in the human family, nor of citizenship in the universal society, the common worldwide fellowship." While Catholic teaching does place limits on this right, the Holy Father clearly sees the importance of recognizing a dignity in all human beings, given to them by God Himself. This means that nation-states have an obligation to facilitate legal migration to the greatest extent possible in order to protect and honor human dignity. This is particularly true in our country, where we have been so greatly blessed. What is more, we are not only called to honor our fellow human beings, but to love them, as Christ Himself has mandated. This is especially true of the immigrant, of those who have traveled great distances, endured countless hardships, and established themselves in our society as trustworthy neighbors. We have just concluded the Christmas season, celebrating the birth of our Lord the Savior. As an infant, He and the Holy Family fled Herod as refugees. As an adult, He was an itinerant preacher, a migrant himself, with no place to lay His head. He taught us that in the stranger, we see Him. Do not forget that when you are witnessing before the public square on behalf of our immigrant sisters and brothers. You are witnessing for Christ. For whatsoever you do for the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Thank you very much. God bless you, and may this conference be filled with many graces.